Your key to success in fantasy football? Just be more informed than your friends. I can help with that. Over 35 tight ends are being drafted this year, but only 6 are good values for you. Kmet is one of those guys because last year he saw a 24% target rate, top 10 in the NFL. And for reference, this was Kyle Pitts, the guy that we think maybe is the most athletic tight end in the league, in just his rookie year had the exact same target rate. And if you're not familiar, target rate, the amount of times you're targeted per route, is the most predictive metric we have for receivers and tight ends for their following year's performance. Now, there's something else you need to know. Allen Robinson is no longer a Bear. And Kmet, in 5 career games without Robinson, averages 7 targets per game, 3 more than when Robinson was playing. And this is huge news because last year, 7 targets per game right here ranked 5th in the NFL amongst tight ends. And it gets even better because Justin Fields for Chicago last year, he targeted tight ends 24% of the time, top 5 in the NFL when the NFL rate is only 20%. And it's worth pointing out that in his first 2 years in the NFL, and year 3 is when you usually break out, Kmet has missed 0 games. But he's not the only durable tight end that you want, because Cowboys tight end Dalton Schultz, yeah, the last 2 years he's also played 100% of his games. And he finished as a top 5 tight end last year, averaging over 12 points per game. Here's why he will repeat this in 2022. Last year, the most successful team at targeting tight ends, your success rate, was the Dallas Cowboys and Dak Prescott. Bingo for Dalton Schultz. And that metric has to do with play calling, the personnel you have at tight end and quarterback, and it led to Dalton Schultz putting up the 6th most targets in the NFL last year for a tight end. He broke 100. So that's already great. That's already top 5 upside, but now the Dallas Cowboys have 205 available targets from this offseason that they need to replace. But you beautiful fellas, here is the thing. Get ready for the schmacks. It's not just Schultz's volume that is impressive. He is creating production on his own. He ranked 17th last year amongst all players in yards after the catch, including wide receivers and running backs. This is a rare skill set for a tight end. And this is a list of yards after the catch, and Dalton Schultz is ahead of guys like Keenan Allen, Cole Beasley, Brandon Cooks, even Stephon Diggs. But it gets even crazier because he had more yards after the catch on 108 targets than Diggs had on 168 targets. That's how much more efficient he was on 60 less targets. So draft Dalton Schultz with confidence. And you could also feel confident grabbing this next guy. And that's because he's free. Cade Otton. Yes, Cade Otton. You might not know the name. He is a rookie on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, a tight end. He goes undrafted this year in fantasy. And what's so good about this Otton guy? Yeah, I'm glad you asked. You may have heard that Rob Gronkowski has retired for now, as of this recording. And a lot of people are flocking to Cameron Brate. And excuse me for 1 second. I am one of those people. I just drafted Cameron Brate in the 17th round of an underdog draft, but he's lately, like as of today, going in the 15th and 16th round. He's skyrocketing way too far. So as all the value gets sucked out of Cameron Brate, Cade Otton is sitting there going undrafted or taken in the last round of drafts, as beat writers are saying that he might actually be the starter. Otton was drafted in the 4th round, so decent draft capital. So yeah, he's a rookie. And look at this. College Dominator was 92nd percentile. It's how much production compared to your team's overall yards you produce. Top 8% of all time for this fella. And for comparison, Cameron Brate's College Dominator was 58% worse than Otton. Now check this out. Here are the Buccaneers targets per game leaders from last year. It was Chris Godwin with 9.1 per game, Antonio Brown with 8.9 per game, and then Gronk with 7.4 per game. Now here's the crazy part. There's a really good chance none of these guys are on the week 1 roster. Chris Godwin's expected to miss at least 4 to 6 weeks. Antonio Brown is not with the team, and Rob Gronkowski just retired. So someone has to fill this void. Why not the young dominant tight end in Cade Otton? And speaking of freakish dominant tight ends, Alberto was easily the #1 tight end winner from this offseason for 2 big reasons. Number 1 is that Russ Wilson is now a Bronco, which is a massive upgrade from Drew Lock and Teddy Bridgewater. And number 2, in that same trade, Noah Fant was shipped to Seattle, meaning that Alberto is now the starting tight end for Denver. And fellas, you need to be excited about this. Here's why. Alberto's workout metrics are elite. He is in the 100th percentile, top 1% of all time for speed at the tight end position. And he has played in 2 games without Noah Fant. In those 2 games, he earned 13 total targets and a 47% target rate. Now, for reference, Davante Adams led the NFL with a 35% target rate last year. Of course, Alberto's was a small sample of just 13 targets, but it's worth mentioning. And target rate is the amount of times you are targeted per route run. Davante Adams led the NFL last year with a 35% rate. So Alberto, yes, a small sample of 13 targets, was being targeted at a historic rate. But there is so much more to this, because even factoring in the games with Noah Fant, Alberto was still top 5 in target rate in 2021. And he was top 3 in fantasy points per target, in yards per target, and he led every single player in yards after the catch per route, meaning he could produce on his own. So you can't ignore the major upside here. And you don't want to overlook this next tight end either, because Gerald Everett is now a Charger. And since Justin Justin Herbert entered the league 2 years ago for the Chargers, he targets tight ends at a top 8 rate. At 21% is above the league average. Now this next stat is why Everett must be on your radars. Herbert's 2 starting tight ends have finished 10th right here as Hunter Henry from 2 years ago. And then last year, Jared Cook finished 17th, and he finished in the top 15 if you don't use PPR scoring. But now he is the odd paw. Gerald Everett goes as the 18th tight end off the board in Underdog, and he actually goes outside the top 20 tight ends on Yahoo. Despite finishing as a top 20 tight end in the worst and slowest offense in Seattle last year, but now he goes to the Chargers, who are top 5 in pace of play. So I currently have Everett in my top 200, 10 spots ahead of where he goes. So like a round earlier, I think he's deserving of being drafted. If you want to see my entire top 250, my tiers, my rankings, and actually want to win your fantasy league, just imagine beating your friends and letting them know you're the champion. Yeah, the Supreme Draft Sheet will help you with that. You can access the cheat sheet by using the link in the description and following these 2 simple steps. So you could just click the link below to find out more. So you could feel confident taking Gerald Everett in the 14th round, but even better because this next tight end in Tyler Higbee somehow goes later. Even though he finished 6th in routes run last year with over 30 routes per game, which is basically wide receiver numbers. Now the reason he didn't finish higher in fantasy scoring was he saw just a 19% target rate, which finished outside the top 25. However, his target rate was still better than Dawson Knox, who currently goes as a top 10 tight end. And I could argue Higbee's in just as good of an offense this year. And it's pretty rare that in like the 16th round of drafts, you're going to find a tight end who averaged 6 targets per game last year with absolutely 0 threats of competition behind him. Between Kendall Blanton, Bryson Hopkins, and Jacob Harris, the 3 tight ends behind Tyler Higbee, they have a combined 5 total amongst all 3 of them NFL career catches. So Higbee currently goes behind guys like Robert Tonyan, who might miss the start of the season, even Hunter Henry, who most of his points came on touchdowns last year. I have him as a top 15 guy. So now you can benefit from knowing that these are the tight end values. But if you want to know about the major injury situations in fantasy football, then you need to check out this video right here. And just a little taste test for you: don't draft players that are already injured.